You seated me beside the trash, but you forgot what was inside this envelope.
What did you do?
I protected my family.
My name is Margaret Hale, and on the morning of my only son's wedding, I carried a $2 million gift in my purse. By sunset, I was sitting behind the hotel kitchen beside 3 garbage cans. And before midnight, the bride who had arranged my humiliation discovered that I had brought something far more dangerous than money. I had brought proof. But to understand why I walked away from that wedding with my dignity, my family legacy, and the power to end her little game, you need to understand what I had already given up for my son. I was 32 when my husband, Robert, died in a highway accident outside Cleveland, Ohio. Our son, Daniel, was 7. One night I was arguing with Robert about a broken dishwasher. The next morning, a state trooper was standing on my porch. Grief did not give me time to collapse. The mortgage still came every month. Daniel still needed breakfast, clean clothes, help with homework, and someone in the auditorium when he played a tree in the school play. I worked nights as a registered nurse at St. Matthew's Hospital. I slept while Daniel was at school and woke before the bus brought him home. Some weeks, I felt as if I lived on coffee and determination. I missed vacations. I postponed dental work. I wore the same winter coat for 12 years. Daniel knew we did not have much, but I tried to make sure he never felt poor. Our happiest days were spent at Marion Lake, in a small blue cabin my father had built. It had crooked floors, old wooden shutters, and a dock that complained whenever anyone walked across it. Robert had taught Daniel to fish there. My father had carved Daniel's height into the kitchen doorframe every summer. That cabin was not just property. It was where the men I loved still seemed alive. When Daniel was accepted into Northwestern University, I refinanced my house to help him. He promised he would repay me one day. I told him, "Become a decent man. That will be enough." For a long time, I believed he had. Daniel built a successful financial consulting firm in Chicago. He called every Sunday. He sent flowers on Robert's birthday because he knew it was a hard day for me. He was ambitious, but he was kind. Then he met Vanessa Cole. Vanessa was beautiful in a way that made people straighten their posture when she entered a room. She worked in luxury event marketing. She knew the right restaurants, the right designers, and the right people to flatter. The first time Daniel brought her to my house, she arrived with French wine and called me Mama Hale. I wanted to like her. More important, I wanted Daniel to be happy. But small things began to trouble me. At dinner, Vanessa asked what my house was worth before asking how long I had lived there. At the lake, she photographed every room but never asked about a single family picture. When Daniel stepped outside, she ran one finger across the kitchen counter and said, "This place could be spectacular if someone with taste renovated it." I smiled. "It is already spectacular to me." She smiled back, but her eyes became cold. 6 months later, Daniel proposed. That was when I began disappearing from my own son's life. Sunday calls became monthly texts. Family dinners were canceled because Vanessa had a charity gala or a tasting appointment. If Daniel and I spoke privately, she appeared beside him within minutes. If I told an old family story, she corrected details she could not possibly know. Once, while we were shopping for Daniel's wedding suit, she said, "Margaret, you must be relieved. A wife can take over all the emotional labor mothers struggle to release." The sales clerk looked embarrassed. I answered, "Love isn't a position someone takes over." Vanessa laughed as if I had made a joke. 3 months before the wedding, Daniel visited me alone. He seemed nervous. "Vanessa wants to know what you plan to do with the lake house," he said. I put down my tea. "Why?" She thought we might use it after the wedding. Maybe renovate it. You are always welcome there. He hesitated. She means permanently. That was the moment I understood what Vanessa expected as a wedding gift. The cabin and its land had become valuable. Developers had been buying lakefront property for years. My attorney estimated it was worth just over $2 million. Daniel looked ashamed. I told her it was your decision. And what do you want? I want her to stop talking about it. That was not an answer. But I let it pass. I had already planned to give him the property someday. After he left, I called my attorney, Samuel Reed, and asked him to prepare a deed transferring the lake house to Daniel alone. Samuel had known me for 20 years. He asked if I was certain. He is my son, I said. Samuel was quiet before answering. Then let me add one safeguard. The deed will not become effective until it is signed, witnessed, and recorded. Until that happens, it is only paper. I agreed. I planned to present it privately at the reception. I imagined Daniel opening the envelope, seeing the address, and remembering his father on the dock. I imagined telling him that the cabin was now his responsibility to protect. 2 weeks before the wedding, the first warning arrived. An unfamiliar woman called me from the hotel and introduced herself as Alina Ruse, the wedding coordinator. Mrs. Hale, I am confirming dietary needs for the parents' table. I don't have any. She paused. The parents' table? Yes. Another pause. I apologize. I may be looking at an outdated chart. Before I could ask what she meant, she said she would verify it with Vanessa. That evening, Vanessa called. Margaret, please don't bother the staff with seating questions. She said. Everything is under control. The coordinator called me. Then she made a mistake. Weddings are stressful. I need everyone to be flexible. Where am I sitting? With family, of course. Her answer was quick, polished, and empty. I nearly called Daniel, but I stopped. I had spent months warning myself not to become the suspicious mother-in-law. I told myself a chair was a chair, and the ceremony mattered more than the table. The wedding took place at the Ashford Grand, a historic hotel overlooking Lake Michigan. Vanessa had chosen white roses, crystal chandeliers, and enough candles to illuminate a small town. Nearly 200 guests attended. I wore a navy blue dress Robert had once said made my eyes look bright. Around my neck was the pearl pendant Daniel had given me after his first major promotion. The deed rested inside a cream envelope in my purse. When I arrived, Vanessa's mother, Patricia, was posing for photographs at the entrance. Her corsage was twice the size of mine. She looked me up and down. Navy is rather dark for a wedding, she said. It is a good thing I'm not the bride. Her smile tightened. Daniel stood near the ballroom doors. For one hopeful second, I thought he was coming to greet me. Then a photographer pulled him toward the groomsmen. Mom, you look great, he called. I'll find you inside. He never did. The ceremony was beautiful. When Daniel saw Vanessa walking down the aisle, his face softened with love. I cried because I wanted that love to be real, even if I no longer trusted the woman receiving it. Afterward, guests moved into the ballroom. A large gold-framed chart displayed the seating assignments. I found table 1, where Patricia and her husband were seated beside Daniel and Vanessa. My name was not there. I checked table 2. Then 3. Then every table on the chart. Nothing. Elena, the coordinator, saw me searching. Her face lost its color. Mrs. Hale, she said softly. Your place was adjusted. Adjusted where? She looked toward the kitchen corridor. A young waiter named Marcus led me through a service door and onto a narrow covered patio behind the ballroom. Delivery crates lined one wall. 3 large garbage cans stood along the other. Between them sat a folding table, 1 metal chair, a place setting, and a card printed with my name, Margartihal, Mautirof Tutchigrom. For a moment, I could not breathe. Music drifted through the wall. Inside, people laughed beneath chandeliers. Outside, I could smell old food and industrial cleaner. Marcus looked horrified. "Ma'am, I can find another chair. Who told you to seat me here?" He glanced toward the door. The final chart came from the bride. Staff were told not to change it under any circumstances. Did my son approve it? I don't know. I sat down because my knees were shaking. Then my phone lit up with a message from Vanessa. "I hope your seat gives you some privacy. Today is about Daniel's new family. Please don't create a scene." I read it twice. The humiliation hurt, but what hurt more was the calm certainty behind it. Vanessa believed I would accept anything to avoid embarrassing Daniel. She believed my love made me weak. Then another message arrived from an unknown number. "Do not sign the cabin over. Check Daniel's email draft folder. Ask about North Shore Heritage LLC." I stared at the screen. Before I could respond, the message disappeared. The sender had deleted it from the messaging app, but I had already taken a screenshot. That was when betrayal became mystery. I opened my purse and touched the envelope containing the deed. Marcus returned with water. "Mrs. Hale, are you all right?" "No," I said. "But I will be." I asked him to photograph the table exactly as he had found it. He hesitated until I showed him Vanessa's message. Then, he took 3 pictures with my phone, including one that clearly showed my printed place card beside the garbage cans. I went inside through the service corridor. Near the ballroom door, I heard Vanessa speaking to Elena. "If Margaret asks, say it was a capacity issue," Vanessa whispered. "Daniel doesn't need another guilt performance from her." Elena said, "There are 6 empty seats at table 12. Then fill them with vendors. She stays outside." I recorded the last part on my phone. I should have confronted her. Instead, I remembered something Robert used to say: "Never interrupt a dishonest person while they are creating evidence." I walked into the ballroom and stopped behind Daniel. "Mom," he said, surprised. "Where have you been?" Vanessa appeared before I could answer. Her hand closed around his arm. "Daniel, the photographer needs us." I looked at my son. "Did you see the final seating chart?" He frowned. "Vanessa handled it." "Why?" She laughed. "Margaret, not now." I waited for him to ask what was wrong. He looked from me to his bride. Then he exhaled like a tired man facing an inconvenience. "Mom, can we please get through today without drama?" Those words ended something inside me. Vanessa had arranged the cruelty, but Daniel had just granted her permission to continue it. I removed the cream envelope from my purse. Vanessa's eyes fixed on it. For the first time all day, her smile became genuine. "Is that our gift?" she asked. It was. Her smile vanished. I turned to Daniel. "I hope one day you remember who you were before silence became easier than courage." Then I walked away. Vanessa followed me into the lobby. "You're punishing him because you aren't the most important woman anymore," she hissed. I faced her. "No. I'm protecting my family from someone who confuses love with control." Her expression changed when she realized I was not crying. "That cabin belongs to Daniel. Legally. It belongs to me. He said you were giving it to us." Daniel knew I was considering a gift to him. "He never said anything about giving it to you." She stepped closer. "Don't make an emotional decision you'll regret." I held up my phone. "That is excellent advice." I left the Ashford Grand at 6:43 that evening. From my car, I called Samuel. "Destroy the transfer documents," I said. "Did something happen?" "Yes. And I need you to research a company called North Shore Heritage LLC." Samuel asked me to spell it. Then he said something that made my hands go cold. "Margaret, that name is familiar. Someone contacted my office last week asking how quickly a deed could be recorded after a wedding. My receptionist refused to discuss your file." "Who called?" A woman who said she was Daniel's assistant. Daniel did not have a female assistant. The drive home felt longer than it ever had before. Every mile forced me to accept what I had refused to see for nearly 3 years. My son had not become cruel overnight. He had simply become comfortable, allowing someone else to be cruel on his behalf. I placed the unopened deed on my dining room table. By midnight, Daniel and Vanessa had called 27 times. I answered none of them. At 8 the next morning, Samuel called. North Shore Heritage LLC had been created 4 months earlier. Vanessa was its managing member. The company's registered mailing address belonged to a real estate developer named Grant Mercer. Mercer had purchased 6 properties around Marion Lake. My cabin sat between 2 of them. Samuel found a planning application showing Mercer's proposed luxury resort. The project could not proceed without access across my shoreline. Attached to the application was a map labeling my property as acquisition pending. Pending, I asked. I never agreed to sell. Someone expected control of your property very soon, Samuel said. The anonymous warning suddenly made sense. Vanessa did not want a family cabin. She wanted the final piece of a commercial land deal. Can you find out what she was promised? I already have an investigator working on it. At 10, someone knocked on my door. Daniel stood there wearing yesterday's tuxedo pants and a wrinkled white shirt. His eyes were red. Mom, he said. I'm sorry. I let him inside, but I did not embrace him. He sat at my kitchen table and told me what happened after I left. When he returned to the ballroom, guests asked where I was. Vanessa said I had become emotional and gone home. Marcus heard her and spoke up. Your mother was seated beside the trash cans, he said. Daniel thought he had misunderstood. Then Elena showed him the final chart and admitted Vanessa had personally changed my seat the previous afternoon. My original place had been at the family table. Vanessa's written instruction said, "Move M. Hale to the exterior service area. She needs to understand she isn't important anymore." Daniel stopped the music. In front of 200 guests. He asked Vanessa if it was true. She called it a misunderstanding. Elena produced the email. Vanessa called the staff incompetent. Marcus showed Daniel the table. One elderly guest said, "If she treats his mother this way on her wedding day, imagine how she will treat him when no one is watching." Nobody defended Vanessa. Not even her parents. Daniel ended the reception before dinner was served. I asked her to leave. He told me. She said I was choosing you over my wife. I told her I was choosing basic decency. He placed the wedding ring on my table. The license was signed. He continued. But it hasn't been filed. My lawyer says I can contest it because Alina heard Vanessa tell the officiant to hold it until Monday. I don't know why she wanted the delay. I did. She wanted the deed first. I showed him the screenshot, the company records, and the resort map. As he read, shame turned into disbelief. I didn't know about any company, he said. Can you access the draft folder in your personal email? He opened his laptop. Inside the draft folder was an unsent message addressed to Grant Mercer. It had been written from Daniel's account 3 weeks earlier. After the ceremony, the Hale property will transfer without resistance. Once recorded, D will authorize the sale. Our agreement remains 15% to North Shore Heritage. Daniel stared at the screen. I did not write this. Who knows your password? He covered his face. Vanessa. The betrayal was no longer personal. It was fraud. Daniel cried then, not neatly and not quietly. He cried like a man whose excuses had finally collapsed. I failed you, he whispered. You failed yourself, I said. I should have checked on you. Less. I should have protected you. That is what good people do for one another. He asked if I could forgive him. Forgiveness is not a door you knock on once, I said. It is a road. If you want it, start walking. That afternoon, we met Samuel and a computer forensic specialist. The specialist preserved the email evidence and found that the draft had been created from Vanessa's tablet. He also recovered deleted messages between Vanessa and Mercer. The agreement was simple. Vanessa would secure the cabin through her marriage to Daniel. Mercer would buy it for $3 million. Vanessa's private company would receive $450,000 as a consulting fee. One message from Mercer read, "What if the mother refuses?" Vanessa answered, "She won't. She spent her life sacrificing for him. Women like that can always be controlled with guilt." I read that line without crying. For years, my sacrifices had been treated as evidence that I would surrender forever. Vanessa was about to learn the difference between generosity and weakness. Samuel contacted the county prosecutor. Because the deed had never been signed or recorded, the property was safe. But the forged communications, unauthorized account access, and attempted fraudulent transaction created serious legal exposure. We did not announce anything. We waited. 2 days later, Vanessa asked Daniel to meet her at the hotel, with both families present. She believed she could control the story if she controlled the room. Daniel agreed. So did I. When I entered the private conference room, Vanessa sat beside her parents wearing a pale suit and no wedding ring. Grant Mercer sat at the far end with an attorney. Vanessa looked almost amused. "I'm glad everyone is ready to behave like adults," she said. Her lawyer slid a document toward Daniel. It blamed the wedding staff for the seating error and offered mutual confidentiality. In exchange, Vanessa would agree to a quiet annulment. Then she looked at me. "This family has suffered enough public embarrassment. If Margaret signs the cabin transfer we discussed, everyone can move forward." Her father turned toward her. "What cabin transfer?" Vanessa froze. I placed my phone on the table and played her voice from outside the ballroom. "She stays outside." Then Samuel distributed the company records, the resort map, and the recovered messages. Mercer's attorney stood up before reaching the third page. "My client will not answer questions," he said. "He won't need to answer ours today," Samuel replied. "He can answer the prosecutor's." 2 investigators entered through the conference room door. Vanessa looked at Daniel. "You're doing this to me over a chair." I answered before he could. "No. The chair was only where you made the mistake of showing us who you are." Her polished expression finally broke. She accused Daniel of betraying her. She accused me of jealousy. She accused the hotel staff, the developer, and even her own mother. But evidence has a way of making performance look small. Mercer later accepted a plea agreement and testified. Vanessa was charged with attempted fraud, identity theft, and unlawful access to Daniel's accounts. She avoided prison after repaying funds connected to another deal, but she received 5 years of probation, community service, and a permanent fraud conviction that ended her luxury marketing career. Justice did not arrive with dramatic music. It arrived in court on a rainy Tuesday while a clerk read the conditions of her sentence. Vanessa looked back at me before leaving. I did not smile. Revenge is not always enjoying another person's fall. Sometimes it is simply refusing to lie down so they can stand on you. Daniel's annulment was finalized 3 months later. Publicly, he took responsibility for ignoring warning signs. Privately, responsibility required more. He rented a modest apartment. He started counseling. He apologized to Elena and Marcus. He reimbursed every vendor Vanessa had mistreated during the engagement, even when they said it was unnecessary. One florist told him, "Your mother offered to help me carry flowers." Vanessa screamed at her for touching the display. Daniel had never known. "People tried to warn me," he told me later. "No," I said. People gave you moments you chose not to examine. There is a difference. 3 days after the ruined wedding, Elena brought me a white box. Inside were family photographs that had been removed from the reception display. Daniel learning to ride a bicycle, fishing with Robert, holding his first report card. Vanessa had ordered them taken down an hour before the guests arrived. I gave the photographs to Daniel. "Why don't you keep them?" he asked. "Because you are the one who needs to remember." A week later, we drove to Marion Lake. For most of the trip, we listened to the radio. The old cabin looked as it always had. Blue shutters, wooden dock, maple tree beside the shore. Daniel walked to the kitchen and ran his finger over the marks in the doorframe. AGEIGHT. AGE Nini. AG10. His grandfather's handwriting was faded but still visible. "I almost helped her sell all this," he said. "You almost lost more than property." We spent the afternoon replacing loose porch boards and sweeping leaves. At sunset, Daniel placed a handwritten envelope inside the cabin mailbox. "For my future self," he explained. "What does it say? Never become a man who lets silence hurt the people who love him." I did not give him the deed. Not then. The lake house remained in my name, because some gifts are too valuable to give before the recipient understands their meaning. A house can be transferred with a signature. A family legacy must be earned through character. Nearly a year later, Daniel invited Marcus and Elena to a charity fundraiser he organized for single-parent families. When he spoke, he did not mention his business success. He spoke about respect. "I once believed loyalty meant standing beside the person you married no matter what," he said. "I was wrong. Love never requires us to cooperate with cruelty. If someone asks you to dishonor the people who loved you first, they are not asking for devotion. They are asking for control." Then he looked at me. "My mother taught me that courage sometimes means walking away. She also taught me that an apology means nothing unless your life begins to sound different afterward." The audience stood and applauded. I remained seated for one extra second, not because I was unmoved, but because I wanted to see if the man before me was truly my son again. He was, years later. After Daniel had built a life grounded in service, instead of appearance, we returned to the cabin with Samuel. On the dock where Robert had taught him to fish, I signed the deed. Daniel looked at the paper, and then at me. "Why now?" "Because now you understand that owning a legacy means protecting what it stands for." He hugged me, and for a moment I could almost hear Robert laughing across the water. Daniel eventually married again, but this time he chose slowly and wisely. His wife, Rachel, was a public school counselor who treated restaurant servers with the same warmth she gave hospital directors. Before their small backyard wedding, she asked me where I wanted to sit. I said, "Anywhere I can see my son." She placed me beside them. Today, the original cream envelope remains in my desk. The first deed inside it was never used. I keep it not as a reminder of Vanessa, but as proof of the night I stopped confusing sacrifice with surrender. I no longer remember the folding chair beside the garbage cans as the worst seat of my life. That chair did not reveal my worth. It revealed everyone else's. Vanessa tried to place me outside my own family, where she thought I would be unseen and powerless. Instead, she gave me the perfect view of the truth. And once I saw it clearly, I did not create a scene. I created consequences.